So what? Now our sin counts matter all of a sudden?
Welcome to Behind the Sins, presented by Cinemasins.
Welcome to Behind the Sins, a look at what's going on inside the world of Cinemasins. I'm Aaron Dicer, and this week I'm joined by my fellow Bafflegabbers, Chris Atkinson.
Hello.
And Ian Whittington.
Is there a reason I'm always last, regardless of who else is on the show?
You know,
I was really hoping I would get second billing this week.
We'll just leave you to stew in that. We write for Cinemasins and TV Sins and do various other things inside the Cinemasins universe as well, like relegate Ian to the end of the list. Actually, Ian, you should be thankful there isn't relegation in the podcast system here. Otherwise, you might get relegated to a different podcast. Something like that.
Is that a sports thing?
Oh, you know, see, I would think talking to a Brit that relegation would make sense, but I forget that you don't even sports in English.
I know it's soccer, and I know that it would technically take 10 years to start a team and get to the Premier League. Like even if you promoted because there's so many different divisions.
There are so many.
Ridiculous.
Yes.
Yeah. Start a team now, and in 2050 you'll be successul.
I know a lot more about it today than I used to, thanks to Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney.
And most of America.
And in the Wrexham show. That Wrexham show is so much fun. I love it so much.
It is good.
Now I'm a huge Wrexham fan, so that's how that goes. I have an English, or no, I guess not an English, I guess a Welsh, right? Isn't Wrexham in
Yes,
Wales?
It's fully Wales. It's pretty damn Welsh.
So I have a Welsh football team. I have a football team and you don't, Ian. How's that feel?
Cool. Feels good. It feels great. I have a lot more free time because I don't watch a sport.
That's very true. You're not lying, Ian. You're not lying.
It is. We talk about a lot of content being put out. They put out a lot of content. Even if you just follow one sport, just one team, that's a lot.
No doubt. I do want to talk about movies eventually, but Chris, I am curious. Do you follow like any of like the English Premier League, soccer, any of that kind of stuff? Like, do you have a team?
No. I have watched some Premier League games before. Like there used to be a thing that when I would wake up on a Saturday morning, it would be on one NBC Sports or something like that would have games, and there was nothing else going on. So I was like, oh, I'll have this on in the background while I eat my breakfast and things like that. And I'd sit there and watch this and be like, oh, who's that? Where's Aston Villa? I have no idea where that shit is.
If in doubt, it's in London. Because
that's the
London
thing.
has
I think
insane amount of teams.
That's what I actually looked into one day. I was like, where are all these teams? Oh, mostly London. And then there's Manchester.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So
that's basically it.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, we're going to do our own bit of relegation today, our own little sports tournament within the Behind the Sins universe. This is round one, and then section C, I guess we'll call it. It is the third.
I am lost.
It is the third groupings of battles, and there's only one more in round one, and then we'll head into round two. So that'll be exciting. And just a reminder, the top 20-ish seeds in this battle aren't even in round one. They all got buys to round two. So there'll be some new movies in round two to talk about.
Which was explained to me last week because that felt weird and like cheating.
Yeah.
You don't even have to play.
Yeah, they
because
earned
it's
it.
assumed that you're going to win.
Yep, that's how it works.
I want to be that good at sport that I don't even have to play.
Yep, that's how it works. So we are going to go through these. As always, you can play along at challenge.com/sin 2022 sin battle. That's challenge.com/2022 sin battle. If you want to check all
sounds
that
like you're
out.
just making it up.
Every week it's different. No, it is not. That is the link. Be sure to vote there. By the way, as each week, the ones that advance, once those episodes go public, will be on the chart. So you'll have new things to vote for each week, new matches to vote on, all that kind of stuff. But thank you for doing that. It's fun. Today, because there are three of us again, your votes don't matter. The three of us will decide. But when there are four of us and an even number, then the tiebreak could come down to the audience vote. But for this week, we will decide once again. So, guys, you ready to get into this? Which is the most sinful movie of 2022. I should say the most sinful movie we sinned in 2022, because there are plenty of non-2022 movies here.
That's interesting. Do you think there's a movie from 2022 that we didn't sin that would compete? Because it would make me wonder why we didn't sin it.
because we sinned it in 2023 because it was late in 2022. So
okay, fair.
So
Technicality.
for instance, there are blue people that came out in 2022.
That wins. That wins.
Yep.
Don't even need to do the tournament next year.
Battle stations! Fight!
Time for the one-on-ones.
Who will win this year's $1 million game?
Round one, ding ding.
All right, let's kick it off with our first match, a very close 63 seed versus 66 seed. We will be competing Close Encounters of the Third Kind versus Top Gun Maverick.
Well, do we even really have to debate this shit?
They both had 127 sins, therefore they are both seated together.
Yes, that's the one thing that we carefully consider when we go into script editing and things like that. Does this seem like it's on par with another movie that it shouldn't? So,
it is one of the most common conversations we have with fans, though, is do not look at that final number as some sort of ranking gauge, of things. And that's one of the reasons I like this tournament, is because we've seeded it by that, but you will come to find very, very quickly that those numbers don't really matter when we actually talk about what movie is sinful. So
even though when we did that movie fights with Screen Junkies a long time ago, they were all like, you gave The Last Airbender 1 billion sins or whatever the fuck it was. And we're like, and Jeremy was rightfully like, so what? Now our sin counts matter all of a sudden?
Yeah.
Chris, you wrote on Close Encounters of the Third Kind with Daniel. What are some of the sins of Close Encounters of the Third Kind?
Mainly Richard Dreyfuss's father character, whatever. He abandons his family pretty damn quick. That's one of the big things about Close Encounters. That's like, like when I love this about movies, right? Like we're supposed to root for him because we know he saw aliens, we know he saw the ships, and his wife and his kids didn't. And now he's like going to the neighbor's yard and he's pulling stuff out of their yard to make the big mountain in the kitchen. and she's like, trying to keep things together, but she thinks that he's lost it. And of course, that she's going to be like, I need to get my kids out of here and whatever. But this obsession that he has with the aliens have given him this obsession for some reason, because they want him to come along on whatever trip this is. And it's amazing to me how much he just abandons his kids just to do this thing. It's like they're an afterthought at this point.
Yeah.
One of my biggest issues with Close Encounters is that they manufacture a thing in the middle where they take the kid. The aliens take the kid, and there's it's an awesome scene. Spielberg, of course, is awesome at these type of scenes where the kid is in the house and stuff starts, like the screws start coming out of the air conditioning and all that other stuff, and they eventually nab him and everything. But I like all the people who are coming off of that ship at the end when they're on the top of the mountain, they're like from World War I and World War II and all this stuff, so they've had time to kind of like, and I know time's a different kind of thing when you go up in space and everything, whatever. I'm not here to talk about that. They take this kid for what is probably like a month or something, and then they give him back.
Less.
They give him back. Like, why did you take the kid? Why did you do that? It makes no sense to me. It never has made any sense to me, other than we wanted to manufacture a thing so that we could get Melinda Dillon on the mountain with Richard Dreyfuss at the end. So yeah, I've always had questions about that. Like, you've been studying, you've had these people for years and years and years and years. And so, and a lot of the stuff is funny too, because these aliens want the chosen ones basically to come to the mountain. At least that's our understanding of what's going on when they come down and everything, but they make everything so secret and so It's
Difficult.
a weird puzzle that you have to solve,
Mhm.
and I've never understood that either. But man, forget all of that. When it gets to that mountain and the ships show up and they're playing the notes and all of that, oh, it's some of the most magical stuff you'll ever see in your life.
It's amazing.
Mm.
Ian, we recently watched this movie
Yeah, we
together
did.
this past week because you hadn't seen it. And other than mistaking Bob Balaban for Richard Dreyfuss, what did you take away from this movie?
Listener at home, just Google a picture of Mr. Dreyfuss in Jaws, where he's got the curly hair, the glasses, the big
Oh
beard,
yes,
and then Google Bob Balaban in this film, put them side by side, and my brain was gone. Because I saw Bob first, I was like, oh, that's him. He's just, for some reason, Spielberg cast him in exactly the same role that he did in Jaws. And my brain convinced myself that Roy was some other actor I'd never seen before. So yes, other than that being the biggest sin of the movie, it is magical. Spielberg is just a master of not showing you the thing that the film is about, but still tricking you into having a good time. I had so much fun with this movie. But I think you mentioned my biggest sin, which is Roy just giving up on his family and just, don't need you anymore. Bye. I'm going to go play with the aliens. And also the government people just being like, cool, you can join these highly trained, I think it was astronauts, whoever it was. They've been handpicked to do it. It's like,
team.
Yeah, not Roy. You can join them. That's fine. Here's your packed lunch. Go for it. The other thing, it has the only thing that feels really shoehorned and tropey in this film is the romance between him and the other lady.
Yeah,
I get it. They're connected. They're relieved to find each other. But that kiss on the edge of the mountain, I'm like, he's not. There's nothing. Oh, they're gonna kiss. Okay.
yeah.
And I didn't get that chemistry between them. It just felt like we need a happy love story in here, even though he leaves. Just like, hey, goodbye to you too.
Right.
That's the bit that feels a little bit out of place for me. But this is, the alien villain's plan is bizarre. The fact that we could even communicate with them is bizarre. The fact that they chose this way to communicate because they had a goal, but just made it as difficult as possible to find the people that they wanted to find. It's bonkers. And also the humans, us, we should not be wanting this. We should not be pursuing them. They have spaceships. They have time travel. We want nothing to do with them. They will kill us so quickly. And everyone's just kind of really excited about the music.
Yep.
Nope. We'll be dead.
Yeah, maybe. We'll see. We'll see when it happens. I for one, welcome our new alien overlords. Just want that on record. So it is interesting to me, the alien plan, which is to embed the shape of Devil's Tower as some sort of like, hey, come meet us here. When most people aren't going to know what Devil's Tower is.
What about the poor bastards in Australia? They're just like, well, I'm not going to get there.
And so I'm just wondering when the aliens get there, and it's like literally Richard Dreyfuss is the only person that their plan worked for. He's the only one that got there. I wonder if they're like, man, we need to really rethink how we do this. Like,
right?
the ones that we wanted to get there just are not getting there. So that always cracks me up in the movie. And
I think that's something we talked about in the Sins video too. Like the people in the US have the advantage here to go to this place. But even then, of course, there's the government is gonna I don't know if the aliens probably don't even think about governments being an issue when they
are they
gonna
let those people on? They're just gonna be like, oh, I guess you just send your government people. Cool. If we'd have known it was that easy.
Exactly. Yeah. So I don't know. It's funny to me, like how great a movie is. It doesn't matter how great a movie is. There's always these things that happen.
Of course.
Yeah.
I wonder if the separation stuff now, having seen Meet the Fabelmans, like all the issues that Spielberg has worked out in his movies with, separations, with dads leaving and those kind of things. It's really interesting to kind of revisit some of that stuff in hindsight after the Fabelmans. So yeah, interesting stuff. Top Gun Maverick. Ian, you wrote on this one. Some thoughts?
a movie I love so much, I decided to talk about it last week instead of the OG Top Gun because
true. That's
of
true.
course. Yeah, this isn't going to be very difficult. Top Gun was my favorite movie of last year. However, it does have the most heated, in-depth debate that I've ever had on a script between myself, Chris, and Daniel, where the script was all but locked, and then we just took another literally couple of hours to go over Tom Cruise's plan and just the different layers, the trigger points that are contradictory, and they're so contradictory that we thought we were wrong. It was like, there must be an element of this that we're missing. So I've rewatched that sequence more than many Star Trek films that I've seen just to make sure we got it right. But a lot like Close Encounters of Third Kind, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all because it's so fun. It is so much fun. I'm not a huge, massive fan of the original Top Gun, probably because I came to it so late. But if it has like the cheesiness and the anything that's problematic, Maverick fixes that for me. It's such a fun ride, as much as the plan doesn't make sense. And the biggest overall sin for me is I've forgotten his name. Goose's son. Oh no, Goose's son. What is it?
Yeah.
It's not
Are you
Doug.
talking about the Miles Teller character?
Yes.
Yeah, it's something like Gooseling. I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah. Ryan Gosling.
We can't not know what it is.
Ryan Gosling.
Yes,
That's
yes.
great.
So Ryan. Oh no. Anyway, Goose's son. He should not be anywhere near this mission. Tom Cruise. Anything.
Rooster.
He should be. Sorry.
Rooster.
Rooster, thank you. That makes sense. Rooster should not be anywhere near this mission at all. And Tom Cruise like battles with himself about how he's going to justify not putting Rooster on the mission. And it's like, he's got a 50% chance. You just tell him he didn't make the cut. Like, you be a professional about it. Or he just shouldn't be part of that 12. Pick the 13th best person and put them in there as well. That's the most problematic thing for me in the whole movie, for sure.
Yeah. It is a fun movie that has plenty of sins. That's about all I have to say about that. Chris, did you have anything to add about Maverick?
I just think it's funny that we always put these villains in these situations where it's like they built this thing on top of a mountain and it's got this big, huge, sheer face where if you tried to fly planes into it, you're going to have to make a hard thing to go up and over them and everything. These villains in movies somehow find the worst geographical locations they can possibly find to have their base of operations in. I sit there and go, how did you get all the stuff there? Like, if it like, how do you have the stuff there if it's that crazy? And like, and it's always just like our intel just discovered that they're about to move this stuff and we're gonna have to blow it up before they get it out. And it's like, how did you get? I'm not gonna doubt that type of thing happens all the time. But it's just always in movies. I'm just starting to, it's like, this was our last chance. We just got this intel just now. And then
exactly the amount of time we don't need it to be.
Yeah, exactly. And like, they always go to this whole, like, we're going to have to use the old tech. There's this weird matrixy thing going on, I feel like, with us. And like, if we really are in a simulation, there's this cry for help that says, you need to go back to the analog days. You need to go back to, something where they can't track you and blah, blah, blah. There's so many of these movies now where it's like, we'll get the old shuttle. We'll get the old plane. We'll get the old computer. It's like, God damn it. Everything is being foiled by this old tech all the time. So that's the other thing. Like, we have to go in there with the old F-14s. Remember, like, it's the 80s still, guys. Remember the 80s. Remember how awesome the 80s were. Let's get in those 80s planes. It's so great. Anyway,
I mean, with Tetris and Air both coming out last week, like, it is 80s central at the Cineplex.
Yes, it is.
I'll kick off the voting. This is an easy one. Top Gun Maverick is the more sinful movie for me. What do you guys say?
Yeah, it's Top Gun Maverick.
Yeah, Top Gun Maverick.
All right, Top Gun Maverick will move on as the 66 seed, and we will move on to the next battle between the 31 seed Encanto and the 98 seed, the Black Phone. So 157 sins for Encanto, putting it as a pretty high seed, and the back flown, the back flown,
The back flown?
Yep, the back flown. My doctor said I had a bad case of back flown. So the Black Phone has 108 sins. Ian, you're the only one writing on this stuff this week. You were on the Encanto script. Do you want to start us off with some thoughts on that?
I want to start off by knowing what the audience said about the last matchup.
Oh, that's true. We should absolutely find out that the audience thought that the Close Encounters was more sinful than Top Gun Maverick.
I'm begging for it. I really am.
All right. It is a lot closer than you would think.
No.
Top Gun Maverick, 55%. Close Encounters, 45%.
Ooh.
So yes, the correct decision has been made, but it was much closer than it should have been. Ian, tell us a little bit about Encanto.
Encanto, I full disclosure, fell asleep through the first time that I watched it. Yeah, just an admission. It may have been out of embarrassment being the only adult in a room filled with children watching this movie and having several scares, and my hat was very, very low. But I very much enjoyed it. I may have been on the low side because I'm always standing next to Aaron Dicer, though, and it's
How do you think I feel about this movie? Do you think I'm over the moon for this movie?
A lot more than I am. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, that's fair. That's fair.
But it always comes down to the magic powers, and how and when they're applied and how and when they're not allowed to use them. And I think the biggest overall sin of the movie was how much we talk about Bruno. And we should, in fact, not be talking about Bruno.
And that's where a lot of those sins pile on because of that bonus round. Yeah.
That's when it really gets bumped up. This probably would be at 14 sins altogether, but they mention Bruno so much. I am struggling to remember a lot of this movie, but I do remember a lot of the powers not making sense. And I think the message of the movie overall missed me, because I originally thought it was meant to be you are more than your powers and you don't need them in order to make this community and to be of use. But then everyone gets powers at the end, and then they're happy because they got all of the powers. I kind of wanted the magic to be less than it was, but the happy ending was, yay, you get powers and you get powers, and now you are worthy, and the villagers shall worship you because you have powers, and nobody will do a hard day's work because you have powers, and this village will just continue to be dependent upon these 6 magic oligarchs that just dominate them forever. So I maybe have read too much into Encanto, but that's where I got to it with it.
Well, I don't think that's the message the movie is going for. I think it's probably going for more along the lines of what you are gifted with, what you are good at is the purpose that you can serve. Like when you are good at something, find ways to use that for, positive impact, positive good. And just because you're not good at the same things as other people. Kind
of tilted when one of you is Superman and someone else is just good at cutting vegetables.
Yeah.
It's not really
vegetables. Yes.
See, you're falling into the trap of diminishing the vegetable cutting. It's an important skill, Ian. It's an important skill.
I'm going to set fire to things with my eyes. I
think we're finding out who the real problem is here. Possibly the one that wants to blaze down the town with their eyeballs. That's probably the real problem.
Yes.
I do enjoy this movie. I do have a tendency to like a well-structured, interestingly told morality tale. That's always fun for me, and I enjoy the songs. I think Lin-Manuel did a lot of Encanto, and you can tell it's really, really good. But it is certainly a sinful movie. It has plenty of the tropes and the things that you're going to find that get us to the place we need to be. Chris, do you have any thoughts on Encanto?
Not really, not anything that's interesting. I watched this movie, I think, to review the script. I didn't see it in theaters, and I watched it just for that purpose, and I don't remember too much about it actually at this point. I probably saw the movie 2 years ago, I guess, at this point. So
Yeah.
I don't know. Somewhere around there. I don't know.
Well, what about the
I don't
Black
know. When did we do this script? Do you even remember?
It would have been
March? It came out in
was
March.
the first.
Yeah, so it's not 2 years, but it's you
It
know,
may as well be.
Yeah, it might as well be, basically. Yeah, but I'm just I don't remember too much about it. I just isn't the by the end of it they realize that her power is like bringing people together or something like that. What is the deal? It's not like a magic power.
The real power was the friends we made along the way.
Isn't that what it is?
It's basically
she brings balance to the force. Is quite literally what she does. Yeah, I think she holds the magic together.
Yeah. So anyway, I like I said, I don't remember anything about it. I don't remember it being terribly sinful, but I also just I don't think it was, it wasn't like my bag totally either. It wasn't like a movie that I like really loved, but
well, we can transition into The Black Phone. Speaking of a movie where the supernatural sets everything up perfectly, this is probably for me the biggest sin of this movie. None of us wrote on this movie. This was Jeremy and Jonathan that wrote on this. The Black Phone is like the bullet train of horror movies. Like everything in this movie is so specifically has to happen in a certain way, conveniently in the exact right order. Every phone call has to happen at the exact right time. Like everything is so convenient in this movie. It was the main thing I remember coming away from it. Yeah.
But ghosts.
Yeah, I actually go ahead.
No, I just said, but ghosts.
But ghosts.
Yeah,
yes,
but ghosts.
exactly.
Yeah. I saw this movie twice. I saw it in theaters, and I didn't understand what the good reviews were about at all. The second time I watched it, I was like, I like this a lot better now. But you are absolutely right about the convenience of everything involving the Black Phone, all the way down to the fact that Ethan Hawke doesn't want anybody to touch the Black Phone, but he just leaves it down there because it doesn't work. And it's like you would think that would be one thing he would do. I don't like people touching that phone, even though it doesn't work. He gets so mad about that people touching the phone, even though it doesn't work. And just take it out, man. Just take it out. There's nothing special about that phone at all. And the movie also asks the question, basically, like, what if there was a kidnapper and he done fucked up and kidnapped somebody who can talk to ghosts, who can help him out?
Right.
That's basically what the story of this movie is. And it's just, I remember watching this going, why is this? I don't. And then it's like, okay, so he's got power. Okay. He's got powers. I guess we're going to have to be okay with that or whatever. But yes, that's the biggest thing about it. And plus all the different things too, where, Ethan Hawke is just like sleeping upstairs and I was massively confused about where his brother was living in this movie too.
Yeah.
Like there's two houses across the street from each other, I think is what and then like so there's a point where the cops go into the wrong house. And I guess they find the bodies in there, but I don't remember now. I've seen it twice and I don't remember because I'm sitting there going, so wait a minute, they went into the brother's house at the one point and then like, okay. But anyway, that could have been explained a little bit better. And I know they're trying to surprise the audience and everything with, oh, it was the wrong house the whole time they went into, like, and it's really the house across the street. They didn't like map that out good enough for us because I was sitting there going, that made no sense to me the whole time. So anyway, yeah, Black Phone is definitely a sinier.
Ian, did you have any thoughts on it?
Yeah, just a couple more. It just have one of my least favorite tropes, which is that ending of you get the climax of the cops are going to find them. They're in the wrong house, and it's so telegraphed. And if that ends up in them dying, I'm fine with it. But they end up getting rescued anyway. So it's like you're building tension to a reveal where I'm like, oh no, they're in trouble. And then they're fine anyway. So it's a frustrating fake out. But The Dark Knight gets a pass. Because they killed the person. And this falls into the same bucket for me as Barbarian and Megan, where They had loads of great reviews for being unique and a new concept and something fresh. And I just came out of it was just like, I'm not smelling the freshness. It just missed me. I was like, yeah, we have something new at the center of this ish, but we're still doing the same tropes. We're still doing the same thing. And I didn't have fun on the ride where you took me through the tropiness.
It's interesting. I think I might like the Black Phone better than you two did. I think what I appreciated about it was there's definitely a pretty clear metaphorical, kind of message here about childhood trauma and how do you escape it and how you deal with the ghosts of your past. And like, I think that's even more, evident when you start thinking about a lot of the child abuse stuff that's in here, the physical abuse scenes, which are really like some of the most intense and real physical abuse scenes I've seen in a movie in a long time. And it's hard to watch. But I think the movie is trying to do something interesting, and I think it's a good script. I do think the script is good. I just think it's so, you have to suspend your disbelief and just go, oh, paranormal,
No, just kidding.
Aaron drifted really close into saying, yeah, I love this movie and here's the reasons. Wait, no, I don't like this about this movie.
No. I do not love this movie, and I do believe it is the more sinful movie. That will be my vote. Ian, what about you?
The Black Phone.
Chris?
It's Black Phone.
Yes, the back flown will be moving on in an upset, the 98th seed, taking out the 31st seed. The audience disagrees. They have Encanto as the more sinful movie, 55 to 45%.
Just because they haven't seen the Black Phone.
That's still a basically 50-50 thing then, right? Because, I mean, they did the same thing with the Top Gun Close Encounters thing, so.
There you go.
That's going to happen sometimes.
All right, we will move on to The Batman versus Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, the 95 seed versus the 34 seed. The Batman has 152 sins. Crouching Tiger has 111 sins. Chris, you wrote on The Batman. What are some thoughts about that?
Let's see, trying to because the Batman is a 3-hour movie. That's
yes.
one of the big things. That's a sin, in this. Jeremy brought this up about the Batman, that whole section where he goes to Turo and he comes back to what are the two people that he's going back and forth between on that? Turo and
Are you talking about between Carmine Falcone and the Penguin? Because I don't know.
Yeah, that may be it. That might be it. Who plays Penguin? Is that Colin Farrell?
Yeah, that's Colin Farrell.
I mean, allegedly.
Right, exactly. But yeah, there's that whole section that takes up a whole lot of time, basically, where Batman is just taking everybody at their word, and then comes to the other person, and the other person says, "No, that person's lying the whole time," and then he has to and it's like you could have just made that scene just like you could have cut that down completely, and then, after that, I don't know. I feel like I'm at a loss here. I haven't seen this movie in forever. I guess it did not appeal to me as much as I thought it did when I first watched it, because I haven't had the desire to watch it again. The 3-hour time makes it nearly impossible for me to go back and watch it again. And I didn't think it was like all that exciting the first time. So
it's pretty down throughout.
Yeah. I was gonna say the movie made me feel bad. Like it's not like I'm not dying to go back to it. Like
I think the one thing I do remember about this, and I'll probably stumble all over this too, though, but is his reasoning for going after Zoe Kravitz, who, again, I will say, I've reviewed this movie a couple of times, and I somehow always forget to mention Zoe Kravitz because I think the movie does her a big disservice all the way through it, even though she's supposed to be a big character. But there's a point where he follows her just based on a whim or whatever, and then she's actually following. He wants to know what the roommate is up to. The roommate is who he's interested in, But then Zoe Kravitz leaves the apartment. He knows that the girl that she lives with is the one that's in danger, but he goes after Zoe Kravitz when she's leaving the apartment instead of just staying at the apartment. And that's like the biggest thing for me in this movie is that he's supposed to be watching after the roommate, but she's like I guess he's just that horny that he goes after Zoe Kravitz. Of course, in the meantime, when he goes to have this meet with Zoe Kravitz, the roommate goes and gets kidnapped and gets killed, and like, oh, what could we have done about that? It's like, well, I guess, like that is the biggest thing for me. And I'm sure a lot of the Batman apologists and everything will be like, well, this is when he first starts out as Batman and he's not nearly as good as you. Just be good at anything basic at all. Like we talk, I mean, this is to, like, I understand you're not great. You're not the Batman yet. Not yet, but at least exhibit some Batman when you're following it. You go, why did you go at what? You don't even know that she's a part of this. You know that the other girl is that was the biggest issue for me with that movie thing. So anyway, enough stumbling through all of that.
I think we touched on my biggest sin with the movie, which is it makes you feel bad for liking Batman. Like the whole point of the movie seems to me to be that vigilante justice is a terrible thing. Like we get to the end and Batman is supposedly supposed to be maybe learning something about why, taking on criminals just on his own, taking them out in the street through violence or whatever isn't great, which is fine. I'm on board. Like, yeah, vigilante justice isn't a wonderful thing, but then that's kind of been the entire character of Batman. So you're kind of left in this place of like, well, then who is Batman? Like at this point, and do I like him anymore? Am I supposed to root for him? Like, it's just a really weird feeling. I think the movie is gorgeous. Like, it's really beautiful to look at, and I think there's some interesting scenes and some fun set pieces, and the Batmobile is incredible, and like I get why people love it, but yeah, I just for me it was just kind of a downer of a movie. Ian, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, really, really down. I applaud having a newish take on the Batman, but I'm pretty sure it was pitching itself as focusing more on the detective part. And if you make this Alfred's movie, then yeah, I would agree because he does most of the detecting. Bruce Wayne is still kind of stumbling through beating people up, and like you said, Chris, following the wrong person and perhaps his boner instead.
Right.
And I don't know, I just found myself waiting for the next thing a lot. It's almost felt like if you're going to make it 3 hours, make it like a mini series and release it on HBO Max or something like that. It took its time and it is beautiful. However, the biggest sin, which gives it 1 trillion billion sins, is freaking Barry Keoghan at the end, who I love, but unnamed or unseen Arkham prisoner. You had to slip the Joker in at the end. You just why do it? Why do it? You teasing what's-its, and that for me I was like, just have your own movie. Didn't even need to go to Arkham.
This is going to be a running theme, I think, through several of these movies. I think movies are addicted to twist endings. I think movies are addicted to surprise third acts. And there,
no doubt about that. And
it is. I think there's something really. I think we're going to see movies that don't do that start to become more beloved because it's just a story that you're told throughout.
And
because to hold information from the audience sometimes it does a disservice to the storytelling. So yeah, no, it's really. It's starting to annoy me that every movie has to have a third act twist. Every single
one of them. That's the thing for me too lately is just that, like if you like, we're talking about Don't Worry Darling was the one that most recently had made this offense to me was if you tell us what's going on right at the beginning or like 20, 30 minutes into the movie, then it becomes a lot more tense and it becomes a lot more of it becomes a really good movie possibly at that point. But they're like, they're so convinced that this surprise at like 2/3 through the movie is going to like be such like a you know a banger. They just like keep everything from you the whole time, and then by the time you've probably already guessed it by the time it gets to that point, and it's like this is a waste of our time. Another thing about the Batman too, by the way, Gotham needs to stop with the skylight, man.
Yes.
They need to stop with this. This is the all-time thing that Batman finds himself, or anybody, the crooks find themselves using to get into people's houses over and over. Like, it doesn't matter how secure your place is. If you have a fucking skylight, people are getting in.
Game over.
And that's what happens to the mayor at the beginning of the Batman, is that he's got the most secure building there is. He's got people like guarding the place, but in the end, I guess Paul Dano goes through a skylight to get into the house, and apparently he's like become super stealth over his life to be able to do that thing that he did. But anyway, yeah. Anyway,
what about
what are we going? What is this going to be going against?
Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. Is it really much like I don't know how you legitimately sin a lot of what's going on in Crouching Tiger or Hidden Dragon, because it's such a fairy tale. Like, it's just it's intended to be such a fairy tale. But and none of us wrote on the script, but does anybody have any thoughts on Crouching Tiger before we call the Batman the more sinful movie?
Yeah, I mean, we don't need to waste time here because none of us wrote on it, and I haven't seen it since it came out. So
I've seen it more recently. I've seen it within the last couple years, and I remember thinking, well, parts of this haven't held up as well for me on like some of the romance tropes and those kind of things. I think about them differently now, and those kind of things. But there's some weird stuff in it that you do really have to suspend your disbelief. But Ian, have you seen it?
I saw it. This is an infamous movie in my family. I saw it once at the age of, I believe, 9 or 10, and my dad rented it on one of the places, box office things where you rent it and then watch it on the TV before streaming kids. He did not realize that he hadn't ordered the English version, so it's just a lot of reading. And so this was my mum reading the movie to me throughout because I couldn't keep up with what was going on. So she's reading every line of dialogue. So I didn't have a great experience with this movie, and I haven't seen it since.
Your mom being a built-in narrator wasn't.
Yes.
Yeah. So the main sin for you is narration. I get it. Okay,
narration,
I understand.
Correct. Yeah.
Chris, why don't you start us off? Which is the more sinful movie, the Batman or Crouching Tiger?
I have to go the Batman by default here. I do remember Crouching Tiger having a lot of absolutely ludicrous things, but that is again what you're talking about. It's fairy tale type of thing. You're going to suspend your disbelief. You have to for that movie completely to understand the jumping around and like impossible acrobatics and
believe it or not, they're walking on air. So
that's right. Never thought they could feel so free.
Never.
But I think the Batman is definitely the cinnier movie, even with my hazy memory. So
Ian.
It is the Batman purely based on the length.
Yes.
If nothing else.
Fair enough. The audience disagrees. The audience...
okay, they can be wrong.
Has Crouching... Oh, no. I read that backwards. Sorry. No, 69.
Nice.
To 31%, the Batman is the more sinful movie. Yeah,
and then I think too, and that one makes sense. I think occasionally you are going to run into a situation where the better movie moves on in this thing because it is cinnier, but it's better. And it's better, but it's still cinnier.
Yeah, it happens. It's happened a few times already, and it will continue to, I'm sure. Which again, another thing that makes this a little interesting. True Lies versus Don't Breathe 2 is the next matchup. A 50 seed versus a 79 seed. 135 sins for True Lies, the favorite in this matchup. Don't Breathe 2 has 121 sins. Chris and Ian, you guys wrote on the Don't Breathe 2 script together. How sinful is this movie?
Oh my God, Don't Breathe 2 is so sinful. I don't Okay. Okay. So Don't Breathe 2, I think like it doesn't make sense from the first movie what's going on. Like he's I didn't understand like he just walking down the street and there's a free kid sitting there
Yep.
and he picks her up and
Outside his
he's
house.
outside his house, and this is after they don't
Yep.
ever tell you the time lapse between the first movie and the second movie. We're supposed to believe that he's had this traumatic experience and he has learned the error of his ways by the end of the first one, even though he's still a very bad guy and needs to go to jail. And yes, I do feel bad for him, what happened to him in the backstory of the first movie. However, I do not feel bad for him, everything that he's done since then. And apparently he's learned some things and he's learned the error of his ways, so he finds a kid on the side of the road and picks her up and raises her as his own. I don't get that at all. I mean, I guess I do because kidnapper's gonna kidnap you.
Do it in the most benevolent way possible.
Yeah. There is I do remember it's weird, man. There's some great movies I don't remember anything about, but I remember a lot about Don't Breathe 2 for some reason. The whole this is another movie that's like plants the seed in your head that something's going to be important because there's these people stealing organs from people around this area.
Oh,
of course, we see
man.
the convenient newscast and
So
the gas
much news position.
and like so we see this creepy dude show up to the little while the little girl's in the bathroom, and we're like, oh shit, there's those organ transplanters going around. We even see a igloo container thing in the back seat of their truck. It's like, oh, those organ people, man, those organ harvesters, they're just at it again. and it turns out that he's her father, and I'm
Yeah.
like, oh,
It has nothing to do with the organ smugglers.
nothing at all.
But yet, he still needs an organ. It's the most bizarre twist.
Right. Yes,
he needs the thing we think he needs, but not for the reason the movie's telling us he needs it.
Exactly. It's so bad. It's so bad. And then there's a pretty cool but like ridiculous one shot, or I think it's a one shot in this, where she's like evading, like they're running around the house, and then she's like, she'll run to one spot and jump down the staircase, hide in this one spot, go in the closet, all these different things while they're doing it. It's pretty cool, but it's so ridiculously convenient. But the most convenient thing of all is by the end of it, Stephen Lang, like one of the guys sets his dog after him, and
I've forgotten about this.
And he goes up into the attic, and he, through a maze of objects, he's able to prevent the dog from killing him. And then the bad guy decides to set fire to the house so that he could kill Stephen Lang. And his buddy's like, well, what about your dog, man? Don't you love your dog? And he's like, fuck it. I just want to kill Stephen Lang. And it's like, okay. And then they go off back to wherever they are. That weird, like, abandoned factory company, whatever that place is,
thing.
Doing the headquarters or whatever. And Stephen Lang gets out of the burning house with the dog, and he's like, go back home. And he follows the dog back home. That's how he finds the people and finds his like makeshift daughter or whatever at the end. And like and then he has this big confession at the end, like like, I'm not your dad, I'm a bad person, I've done a lot of bad things, you shouldn't hang around me. And we're all like, yeah, totally, yeah, exactly. Correct. Yeah, don't feel bad for you. Yes. That's the biggest sin for Don't Breathe 2 is they find people who are so deplorable that they try to make him look good by comparison. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't play that game. Don't play that game.
I've seen the first movie. I'm locked in on my thoughts on the morality of this person.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I fully thought it was game over when the girl gets kidnapped. Once they finish the Home Alone aspect of the movie,
Yeah, there
which
is a Home Alone thing in this.
I think is meant to be a callback to the first one, so it at least feels familiar, and then they kind of subvert the expectation by getting that done quicker, and the girl gets kidnapped. And I'm like, oh, I guess it's game over, because there's no fucking way that he's making his way to wherever she is. I mean, even if he knew where she was, he would have a hard time. Oh, the dog's going to take him there? No, the dog isn't. The dog is going to take him there. Okay, I was so checked out by that point. I'm like, this isn't happening. This isn't. This is literally impossible. That dog is A, not helping him, and B, not able to do what you think that dog is doing. But the overall sin of the movie is the success of Don't Breathe, I think, must have been a surprise. How much people love Stephen Lang somehow was a surprise as well. That they almost felt bad about how much of a dick they made him, because like, wow, we have an anti-hero here that we could franchise and we can do something with. But yeah, the problem is he's a bit of a rapist, so it's really
He's a bit of a rapist, yes.
It's really tricky to turn him into the hero of the second
You can't be
one.
no halfway rapist.
So I was convinced that this was a prequel, because I was like, the only way you make us root for him, and I think we wrote that in the script, was if you make it before the bad shit that he's done, so that at least in my head, I know at this point he's not a dick yet. He has dick potential, but right now he's somebody I can root for. But then they make it really clear that it's after the fact. I'm like, oh, this is going to be an uphill struggle. And it is. Like, it just is. It doesn't matter how much he redeems. I'm not even going to say that word. Cut that out, Aaron. It doesn't matter what he does at the end of the movie. Thank you. It's still, he's beyond redemption as a movie hero. I don't care if you give him Grogu or a little girl or whatever. He's still an absolute bastard. So yeah, that just it was several steps too far for me to be rooting for this. This individual.
He had in the first one he had a turkey baster full of Grogu. So yeah. You both sighed in unison. Success.
If you check that wave file, they will be lined up exactly.
I haven't seen Don't Breathe 2. It is one of the few in this tournament I haven't, for whatever reason, decided I want to go see. I just haven't.
Let's not forget too that the real bad guys in this movie kidnap this girl, and they don't have any like, I don't know, they need to kill her to get the organ that they need to save the mom. Yeah. So it's a heart. Yeah, it's a heart. They need that to save the mom. But then they have this weird thing where they're like, well, you can leave anytime you want. And they let her walk out the door, and she's about to walk out, but then mom sings a song that apparently, you know, when you're an infant, you totally remember that shit. And that's what turns her around. And then they're like, okay, now we're going to kidnap you for real. I don't understand what that was all about either. Like, are you trying to make us feel like they have some good? But
why do you need her consent? I think it was a lot, because at that point we don't know. This is all about hiding stuff from the audience. We don't know that they're going to kill her and take her heart. So for us, yeah, I think it's supposed to make us maybe side with them. But from their point of view, it makes no sense. You don't need her consent. You're about to knock her out and take her heart. What's with why do you need her to agree to do this? You don't. You just needed it to be a surprise to the audience.
Right, exactly. That's the thing about hiding stuff, right? Then it ends up not making sense in the end when they do it.
Well, I'm loving this conversation as somebody who hasn't seen the movie. You guys are making a really big case for this movie to go far in this tournament. There's a lot of sinful stuff here. We could talk about True Lies a little bit. There's certainly some sinful stuff in True Lies. There's stuff that hasn't aged well. There's stuff that feels a little ridiculous. What do you guys have any thoughts on True Lies before we vote for the other one?
Well, yeah, I mean, this is a weird one for me because I used to watch True Lies all the time. I used to, first off in theaters, because this was like the second year I was in a movie theater and True Lies came out that summer. I used to watch scenes of this movie just over and over and over again. So like watched it a ton, but haven't watched it in a long time. So it's such a weird thing to like
Lose
understand,
something.
realize is that I've watched it many times. I know the movie almost by heart, but I haven't seen it in probably less years. And I don't, I mean, I remember Arnold Schwarzenegger on a horse, and I know that John Wick sort of like took that
Yes.
as a inspiration in John Wick 3. And I do remember the Jamie Lee Curtis scene where she's supposed to play a stripper of some sort, and like they do this whole like elaborate thing, and God, how are these people still married by the end of the movie? I don't have any idea. Like you know, he's been keeping this from her the whole time, and the whole, it's weird, right? The movie has a whole section based on their marriage, and it kind of like he makes up a thing so that he can show, like, you know, he makes up a thing. He's trying to get, first he needs to get Bill Paxton out of the way, make sure he's not a problem. It's like a whole thing for their marriage, and then it just happens that his real like spy life gets mixed in with what he's doing with his wife, and that's where the whole movie starts, kind of, basically right after that. But anyway, I don't know, I actually don't remember much about this movie anymore. I remember a lot of scenes from it. I don't remember. I know it's sinful as hell, but it's not as sinful as Don't Breathe 2, I can guarantee you that.
So Chris's vote is Don't Breathe 2. Ian?
I remember watching this maybe once a year with the parents. We would just watch Arnold Schwarzenegger movies back to back and just cycle through them, like Commando, Eraser, Predator, True Lies, just name it. And I was way too young to have watched it. And yeah, even at a young age, the strip scene didn't make a lot of sense to my brain ever, because I was like, wait, she doesn't know that it's him, but is doing it to save the world. He knows that it's her, but doesn't think she'll be able to do it. How do they still like each other after this? How are they still friends? Like they really, somebody should be really mad here. So that scene always stands out in my head, but it has the usual action movie sins and conveniences that like Jamie Lee Curtis should have like died immediately. There's no way she should have got through any of this, and if she does, it belittles training that Arnold Schwarzenegger's character has. And I don't know, somebody shouting Battery Aziz for some reason.
I don't know if True Lies invented this, but it also has that, what is now a trope, where the person who has handcuffs on them tells the bad guy what he's going to do to them. Like right at, like, you know, that they think they have the upper hand, but you know, you're talking about Harry Tasker here. So he's like telling him, like, I'm gonna break my handcuffs. I'm gonna kill this guy. I'm gonna use him as a human shield. I'm gonna blah, blah, blah. And he does all the things that he says.
I'm gonna take his head and stick it up your ass.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Ian, what's your vote?
Oh, it's Don't Breathe 2 for sure.
My vote as well is Don't Breathe 2.
Which means we did a great job, Chris, considering he hasn't seen Don't Breathe 2.
Absolutely. I have no desire to see it, but now know how sinful it is. The audience agrees. 59% said Don't Breathe 2, 41% said True Lies. So Don't Breathe 2 will be moving on, and with a strong performance. All right, Scream 4 versus War of the Worlds. So this is a 47 seed versus an 82 seed, 136 sins for Scream 4, and 120 sins for War of the Worlds. Ian, you wrote on Scream 4. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, usually when one of you lovely people puts me on a third, fourth, fifth movie in a franchise, I like to watch all of them, especially if I've never seen them before. For some reason, time constraints, something happened where that wasn't the case for Scream. So Scream 4 is the first Scream movie that I ever watched. So I was lacking quite a bit of context. I did not have a good time. I have seen it again since and actually enjoy it more, mainly because I compare it to 3. But it's tricky because the Scream movies know what they're doing, but they can still fall into the same traps. And it's really difficult to sin it for that, because where's that line of it's deliberately doing this. So versus leaning on a crutch. So where I landed was just my instinct of how was it making me feel as I was watching it, and I haven't seen it since, but I remember being frustrated by, even at this point, it felt tired, and I hadn't seen the previous 3 films, and somehow the concept felt tired inside this movie, just even the first time I was watching it.
Which is interesting considering it's meant to refresh that concept in many ways. Like it's the point of the movie is to not make it feel tired, you know? So that's interesting.
And I think that's probably the biggest sin that it falls into is it gets tied to its own concept too much. And I didn't care who the killers were. It's bullshit who the killers are. I think there's obviously 2 of them in this one, but this one had a really egregious height difference. One of them is like 6'5", and the other one is 4'1". And it's just like, there's no way. You must have had insane platforms. And I remember where they were hiding the costumes was really strange to me as well. In general, the thing that gets me with screen movies is how disingenuous they are with hiding who the killer is. Like, I would like to have a chance at deducing who the killer is, but they're so determined to make sure I can't guess it that I don't believe they're the killer. Usually.
Yeah.
Chris, let's go to you next. You wrote on War of the Worlds, so tell us why War of the Worlds is a sinful movie.
It's one of those where, like, somehow I was trying to remember some things that were in this that like the aliens. Okay, we find out that the aliens have planted these things all around the world, and I guess they did it many years ago because they built an entire city over this one that's in Tom Cruise's hometown, and then of course it busts the streets as it comes out and everything. Then one of the biggest things about War of the Worlds is when that alien does come out, everybody stops and just gapes at it, and just like they don't run away immediately. And I understand, like we have footage of real life events of people stop. I don't think people would do this with aliens, though. I don't think they'd stop there and just look and just be like, oh, that seems nice. You know, they wouldn't just, you know, they, I think you would probably be trying to get to the closest transportation as possible. The thing that, one of the biggest things about this movie that does make sense to me, and maybe it's one of these things that somebody who's a real electrical engineer would know, is how the EMP that the aliens use that turn off everything in this world somehow missed the certain parts of Tom Cruise's truck that he's driving around. Like he says, oh, it's a solenoid. All I just had to do is change the solenoid. And I'm like, yeah, but the EMP is making it so that nothing runs, right? So there shouldn't be anything that works. It doesn't matter if you change the solenoid. It's fine. It shouldn't run, but it does because they need Tom Cruise to get the hell out of. Is he in Boston, or he's going to Boston? Because that's where his family is.
Yeah.
Is in Boston, I believe. And there's also a weird scene in this too where he leaves his daughter behind. There's all this war going on, or all these soldiers getting like in place to start shooting at the aliens, and there's this mass chaos, and Cruise is looking for somebody to talk to, and he's like, tells his daughter, just stay here, I'm gonna go way over here to go talk to why can't she go with him? The reason why she can't go with him is so that 2 weirdos will come up and start talking to her and saying, and not believing her that her father is right over there, just right over there. And there's it's a fake tension moment too, because they're about to take her, and then he comes up behind them and says, oh, hey, wait a minute, that's my daughter, don't do that, don't do a taken, you know. So so it's stuff like that. Of course, Cruise is the only one smart enough to figure out the alien's weakness at the very end, and that's really annoying considering how many soldiers sit there and try to kill them the whole movie. And like he's the only one who can figure that out. The Tim Robbins thing in the basement.
Uh-huh.
I mean, he ends up murdering Tim Robbins at the end of that because he won't. I mean, I mean, it's a weird kind of scene, and then but like, yeah,
It's
War of
pretty
the Worlds
sinful.
is a very sinful movie. It's got a lot of cool stuff though, because it's Spielberg, as always. But I'm like, there's a flashes of a lot of stuff going through my head right now. But in the interest of keeping it going, I won't say any more.
Well, I will kick off the comparison voting and just say I'm going to go with War of the Worlds as the more sinful movie here. I think based not just on everything Chris said, which is all true, also based on the fact that I really do feel like a lot of Scream 4's sins are the point of the movie. Like the movie is attempting them. They're not mistakes necessarily, but they are sins. So it's still worthy of thinking about them that way. But this is one of those instances for me where the movie I like more is going to be the more sinful movie for me. I love War of the Worlds. It's one of my favorite movies. I think Spielberg does some really incredible work here. Some of the effects in War of the Worlds hold up more than effects of movies that were made in the last 3 years. Like that big city destruction scene is insanely well shot. Amazing effects. The tension is incredible. I love War of the Worlds, but I do think it's the more sinful movie. So that will be my vote. Ian, discuss a little bit and then make a vote.
It's one of those where War of the Worlds, I think the way we've compared this is that I think Scream has like one elephant-sized sin that keeps it going throughout, and War of the Worlds has 1,000 mouse-sized sins that add up to more than one elephant. Because there's more going on. It's trying to do more. It has a lot more plot things that are confusing. So yeah, I think it's got to be War of the Worlds.
Chris, final discussion and vote.
War of the Worlds.
All right, there you go. War of the Worlds. Which is, again, the audience thought Scream 4 was more sinful, 55-45, and that makes sense. But I think we've called the right one. War of the Worlds will be moving on to the next round. Next battle: Ron's Gone Wrong, the 58 seed, versus Death on the Nile, the 71 seed.
Let's go.
Death on the Nile, a movie that's so bad that we have a recurring Ian sin.
Yeah, we do.
Why don't you start there, Ian? You wrote on Death of the Nile. So what makes Death of the Nile a sinful movie?
Death on the Nile is just now my go-to if I want to compare to anything in another sin script. It's like, yeah, but fuck Death on the Nile. If I can't find my way into a sin, I'm just going to give Death on the Nile an extra sin. It's so frustrating because I really, really liked Murder on the Orient Express, and I really like Kevin Branagh's Poirot so much. This is just a layer upon layer of bullshit when it comes to a murder mystery. And the secrets it's hiding, the misdirects, the fact that Poirot has all of the clues that he needs. I think 50% of the way through the movie, when they fish out the bit of fabric that has the pigment of paint on it, that's all of the clues that he needs, because that's all that he calls back to at the very, very end. Yet Poirot acts as if he's still in the dark. He questions Book for no apparent reason. 2 or 3 people die because Poirot the story doesn't let Poirot give over his evidence all at once. And it's not like he has this light bulb moment of, oh, that's what it all means. He just decides that he's had enough of people dying now, and I'm going to gather everyone together and tell them who the killer is. And the fake outs of one of the most egregious ones is the guy that pushes the stone off of the top of the pyramid or wherever they're going to, in an act of passion, tries to kill one of them but misses. He's still a murderer. He still is in trouble. And I kind of the cool thing at the end of Murder on the Orient Express was Poirot saying, like, have the gun and shoot me because you're all in on it. I cannot let you all go. You may as well kill me because I'm going to tell the police. And he has this big moral back and forth about what he should do. At the end of this movie, he's just like, peace out, people. you go. You're free to go. Other than the people that actually committed the murder that conveniently killed themselves, everyone else that did horrible things, I'm just gonna let you all go. It's fine. It wound me up at every corner, and the fact that they end Murder on the Orient Express with "There's been a murder on the Nile," but guess what? That's not the murder that we're investigating in this film. That's another murder that happened on the Nile that they just happened to call Poirot for. But now there's a second thing on the Nile that Poirot was needed for because they weren't happy with setting that up for the movie. They wanted a fresh start. So it's
so
just
brutal.
It's so frustrating, and Gal Gadot just bugged me a bit in this movie. And then you can overlay all the problematic stuff with your main man, what's his bucket, Army Hammer. You can overlay that as well. It just feels bizarre in this movie when you're looking at it through that lens as well. So fuck this movie.
Yeah.
Well, I will make a case for the sins of Ron's Gone Wrong since I wrote on that one. This is a very sinful movie. Now, I will say it's cute, it's fun. I get why people like this movie. There are certainly lots of fans of Ron's Gone Wrong. It's a movie about individuality and how that's important, and how social media impacts our brain's ability to mature and all that kind of stuff. But the tech in this movie is so bad. It just does whatever the story needs it to do. Probably the biggest sin is that the solution to this virus that has infected all of these robots that are now, going together to create all these things, the solution is the glitch in the Ron robot fixes them all somehow. So the solution to the problem is that none of these robots do what they were made to do. That's the solution somehow in this, because the point of the movie is, well, individuality is great. Yes, for humans. For technology, individuality absolutely destroys things. So yeah, there's some really, really sinful stuff in it, but it is a lot of fun in many different ways. What do you think, Chris? A little bit of comparison between Ron's Gone Wrong and Death on the Nile, and then go ahead and vote.
Yeah, Ron's Gone Wrong also has the unfortunate thing of being like Mitchell's versus the Machines, and it also has some Big Hero 6 in it.
Yes, yeah.
It's a movie that feels kind of samey as you watch it. Has all sort of the same things going on in it. Then Death on the Nile, man, I remember watching this in the theaters and first going, why is everything so fake looking in this movie? It's so artificial. There's nothing, everything is artificially beautiful. And then like when it gets to a certain point in the movie where there's it's just before the murders happen, or the murder happens,
like 2/3 of the way in, I
was like, oh, they're the killers. Oh, I just figured it out right there, right wow. there. And because it was just it was staged so poorly that it instantly had my suspicions up. So, and then everything Ian is talking about there's a lot of stuff in there. Like he also, and this is my last point, we can go on. There's that murder that happens where the blood splatter goes onto the wall and he sees that there's like a figure of some sort that was there. And he surmises that it must be this person that must have been standing there at the time this murder happened. Do you remember this?
I think you're talking about a different movie.
No.
Does that happen in this one?
There's another murder that happens. You said that, and it's like all this blood splatter happens on the wall, and he sees a cutout.
That's in Death in the Nile. Yeah.
Basically, it's a cutout like of a part of the wall that has no.
There's a void.
It's a human shape.
Yeah, there's a human-shaped void in the blood.
Oh no, sorry, I do remember that. Yes, yeah.
And he surmises so much from just that that I can't just figure. You can't just tell me exactly who that is and what they must have heard.
Right.
And like what and that's that's the type of stuff that like Poirot usually there's some logic to it when you're like when he's like, and this had none. This was like, oh, I get it, and he understands everything based on this blood splatter. Anyway, yeah, I'm ready.
He just seems to go from person to person, just interviewing them. Like based on nothing, like based on no observations. Just
So is that
Yeah.
your vote then, Chris? Death on the Nile?
Yeah, definitely not.
Ian, final discussion and
Ron's
vote?
gone wrong.
All right. Do you want to
Death
talk
on
about
the
why?
Nile.
Oh, okay.
Death on the Nile.
Have you seen Ron's Gone Wrong?
I have not actually.
Yeah.
I lied. That was the other movie on here I
Yeah,
haven't
it's
seen.
cute. It's cute. I'm voting Death on a Nile. Death on a Nile. Yep, just on,
Yes, Death
on,
on a
on
Nile,
a
yeah.
singular Nile.
A death on the Nile.
I'm voting that as well, even though Ron's Gone Wrong is a lot more sinful than people think. However, 66% of the audience also agrees Death on the Nile is
That's the
more
final
sinful movie.
Nile in the coffin.
Thank you. Thank you. Ian.
You mean Niall? Like Nile? Or, yeah.
I love that band. All right, moving on to Dora in the Lost City of Gold versus the Prince of Egypt. This is a little theme here. Animated films dealing with cities, I guess. 26 seed for Dora and 103rd seed for Prince of Egypt. This is a mismatch for sure. 100 sins for the Prince of Egypt, 171 for Dora and the Lost City of Gold. I'll kick us off and talk a little bit about the Prince of Egypt. We recently did the Sinmentary on this. And most of that Sinmentary is us talking about how amazing this movie is. But then there are also these sins. The biggest one of which I think we decided was the giant murder wall that is in the temple right next to the place that Moses and Aaron are always, or not Moses and Aaron, I'm sorry, Moses and Ramses are always having their daily discussions or whatever. And there's this giant murder wall of them throwing all the babies to the alligators. And yet somehow Moses takes till he's, coming back to go, oh my goodness, what is happening here? So yeah, I think that's really one of the only things I look at and go, oh yeah, that's a main sin. But Prince of Egypt is pretty amazing. Chris, tell us a little bit about Dora and the Lost City of Gold. What makes it a sinful movie?
It kills me in movies where you have someone who comes from, like, is an exchange student who exhibits some sort of smarts or whatever, is instantly unpopular. And like Dora in this movie is an attractive girl who's very smart and very friendly. And the movie makes it seem like nobody would like anybody like that.
Yeah.
And it kills me when I see that in movies where it's like, are you serious? Just like one or two people like this person. Okay. There's a weird scene in this movie where they go to a museum of some sort and the bad guys somehow know that Dora's gonna be there because they have this elaborate thing set up so that she'll go down in the basement and they'll capture her and then they'll take her back down to, I think she's in Brazil or something. I can't remember what South American country she's from, but like there's this elaborate thing, like makes no sense whatsoever, that they take her and everything. One of the biggest sins of this movie for me is that they go into this like a planetarium type thing of some sort or whatever, and they're looking at it and they're reading into the stars or whatever, and they can't figure out the puzzle that they're trying to figure out, and then she just turns a 180 and says, wait a minute, this is the southern hemisphere, I have to look at it this way. A 180 isn't going to give you the southern hemisphere look that you're looking for.
No.
And she just kind of makes a turn around and they're like, this is what we need to do. And and then there's like, it was one of those scenes where like there's like this big flood and they're like underwater for what seems like many minutes, like more minutes than survivable. And then they just kind of wake up from unconsciousness. I'm like, if you're unconscious, do you stop breathing in water? Is that how that works?
Yeah, don't you know?
In the movies.
Yeah. But Dora is actually a very enjoyable movie.
It's cute. It's fun.
It's one of the most sinful movies I've ever seen. I remember having a lot of fun going through that one because there's so many things. The villain plan makes no sense. All the different things that go on in this movie. There's a lot of things that just don't make any sense in it, but it's fun. So.
Yeah, so much Dora survives this. Ian, you get to start with your conversation and vote. What do you think of these two movies, and what's your vote?
Dora is the most sinful.
All right.
No,
no conversation to be had.
I adore The Prince of Egypt. It's an incredible movie, beautiful movie. I wish DreamWorks had carried on down this route, and it is just one of the greatest anomalies in cinema history for me, that this is where they started and now where they are. And it's
then a thing called Shrek happened.
right. It's just insane. Yeah, wild. But and Dora's, I mean, and it has the usual adventure weird sins, and the Bible always gets a sin. Maybe extra so. And then Dora, yeah, it's fun, but it's always going to have the Indiana Jones quest for a thing. The thing that gets me with Dora, it's the same thing as all of them. It's the people that do the traps first, or they shouldn't ever be competing with each other. It's let one team go through everything, follow them, let them do the hard stuff, and then swoop in at the end to grab it. Someone always ends up doing too much work or too little work, or something along those lines.
Yeah.
But yes, Dora.
Dora also has the thing that I've seen in so many quest movies, where the people who set up the quest, why did they set up the quest?
Why'd you do it?
If there's a thing that you don't want anybody to have, then why give them any blueprints whatsoever? I know you're making it difficult for them to get, but why give them any path to get to it? That's what I don't understand. Anyway,
you either made it too hard or too easy. One of those two things.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, this is an easy one. Dora is the more sinful movie. Chris, what about you? Any final thoughts?
Yeah,
Vote?
It's going to be Dora.
Okay. Dora, just like in the movie, will survive this and move on to the next round. The audience, 72 to 28%, agree. On to the next one. The Bad Guys, 39 seed with 143 sins, versus the Sorcerers Apprentice, 90 seed with 114 sins.
I'm out, guys. I'm out. I saw the Sorcerer's Apprentice when it came out. I haven't seen The Bad Guy, so go.
I will start us off as the only writer on these, and I wrote on both of them. So I will tell you what.
I'm out too.
I'll just decide, guys. I'll just decide. The Bad Guys is a strangely beloved animated film that came out recently. I think it has a lot to do with a lot of things, if I'm trying to put my finger on it. Like a lot of things do, with kind of a fresh animation style. There's some interesting things animation-wise that are happening here. It's a little bit of a different kind of irreverent style of humor, that kind of thing. But it is so full of sins. I'll just tell you kind of about the main big ones, but there's all sorts of ones in here. First of all, like, they have these mug shots with the animals, and they're all like in their 40s or 50s, but they're all species of animals that don't live past like 12. You know what I mean? So, like, there's like, just do a little bit of biological research. That's all I'm asking. But no, the real big stuff here, and this is like we talked about, every movie has to have a twist ending. The big twist is that the villain of the movie is actually a good guy at the end of the movie. Spoiler alert. But it ruins the entire movie. Like, it breaks the movie in like 3 or 4 different ways for this to be the case. Because once you consider Snake being a good guy, you have to consider all of Snake's actions up until the end of the movie, and how silly they would be if he was actually a good guy. The fact that he doesn't tell any of his friends things that would have protected them, kept them safe, all these kind of things. He lets them be in danger because the movie thinks, you know, that it needs him to be a big twist at the end to be a bad guy. There's relationship stuff that doesn't make any sense. Even the finale of the movie, he would have done things differently if we knew he was trying to save things at the beginning of the big finale, those kind of things. So it's a really big sin what this movie tries to do with its big twist at the end. And really annoyed me because it just breaks the rest of the movie. I hate that. So congratulations, you surprised the audience. You know why you surprised them? Because it doesn't make sense with the rest of the movie. That's why you surprised them. Sorcerer's Apprentice, also very sinful. The fact that this character has moments in this movie where they're more preoccupied with this budding, I'm going to call it romance, even though the facts of the movie would call it stalking. There's a lot of pursuit amidst non-interest in this movie. But the being preoccupied with that stuff when like the world is ending around him and he knows he has to, play a role in this, but instead he's more concerned about, jealousy and, oh, does this person like me? Check yes or no, I think is the scene, is really weird to me. Also, everything in this movie works because it has to work, but none of it makes a lot of sense. Like all the technology, like he builds this big what are they called, the Tesla coil, like he gets these Tesla coils and builds this big machine somehow underground where nobody knows what's going on, somehow has the engineering knowledge to put all of this together. Like there's all of this tech stuff. The spells are as shaky as the tech is. Like spells, like there's a mirror spell that works one way in one instance and then a completely different way in another instance as far as what, people can see going back and forth between the mirror worlds and how you break out of the mirror worlds, all of that stuff. So there's a lot of that plotting throughout the movie, kind of sinful kind of stuff. So both are very sinful movies. This is a difficult one for me. I'm going to let you guys vote, even though, you don't necessarily have educated opinions, and then I will vote at the end. Ian, have you seen either of these movies?
So I've seen The Sorcerer's Apprentice. I misread the bad guys as the good guys. And so I have not seen the bad guys. I have seen the good guys. I can talk about the good guys if you like. The bad guys, you confused me because you were describing something that was not the good guys. My gut instinct is that The Sorcerer's Apprentice has to have more sins just for the magicness of it and that type of adventure. My instinct would be that.
Chris, where are you going to land?
I don't know. You convinced me with the fact that the bad guy's surprise reveal breaks the entire movie. It makes it the more sinful for me. So,
all right. Chris will go with the bad guys. I agree. I cannot get over the ending of that movie, and I think this is one of those cases where The Sorcerer's Apprentice probably has more sins, but I am more perturbed by how world-breaking the sins of the bad guys are. So I'm going with the bad guys as well. So the bad guys will move on. That is not an upset. It had more sins than The Sorcerer's Apprentice. However, if you look at the fan vote, 66% thought The Sorcerer's Apprentice was the more sinful.
A little bit of an upset there.
So a little bit according to the audience. Moving on to Ice Age Dawn of the Dinosaurs versus Draft Day.
Oh, God.
Chris, you wrote on both of these, so talk a little bit about what makes both of them sinful.
The Ice Age movies are really, really beginning to blend together. But if I recall, this was the John Leguizamo adventure, basically, where he breaks off from everybody and he finds the secret underground thing.
Simon
where
Pegg is
where he just so happens to find the giant dinosaur bone bridge to the world that's underneath the world they live in.
Very scientific.
Beautiful sunshine.
Genesis chamber. That's all it is.
Yeah. I actually, other than that, don't remember too much about Ice Age Dawn of the Dinosaurs. I just remember that they go down into this place and then they want to go back home at the end and they have to, I don't remember too much. I just remember it being like a slog. And I remember there was quite a few sinful things in it, but geez, I can't even remember too much about it. You may have to help me out.
I wrote on it too, so I'll go ahead and talk about what makes it sinful as well. Everything you said is obviously very true, and the Ice Age movies by this point just don't care. They just honestly don't care. They know they're going to put out a movie with these characters. Those characters are going to be on the posters. Kids are going to go say, I want to go see those characters that I know that are on this poster, and families are going to take them to the movie. And it's going to make some money. Like that's, at this point, it feels to me what Ice Age is doing. The problem they continue to have, and this movie suffers from it greatly, is they have so many different characters now. Like, because they keep adding characters in each movie, now there's like 5 different story, 6, 7 different storylines slash character arcs. Like, we're supposed to feel something about like 6 different character arcs in this movie. Diego has a character arc. Of course, Manny has a character arc. In the Simon Pegg character has a character arc, and Scrat has a character arc. Of course, completely separate from everything else. We've got to see Scrat fall in love. I think we called it "She's All Scrat."
Yes, we did.
That character arc. So because all this stuff is happening, the movie doesn't really have a chance to be a movie. It just feels like 7 different short stories like intercut together, and they don't necessarily work. So that's kind of what I found the most sinful about this one, because every character has to get their stuff in. So
yeah.
So talk a little bit about what makes the other movie, Draft Day, so sinful.
Oh boy. Okay, so Ian, I don't know if you are familiar with how sports drafts work. You are, right?
Is this the thing where they decide who's playing which team?
Yes. So
That's the extent of my knowledge.
Yeah, in fact, Draft Day for the NFL is coming up. I don't even know what date it is, but it's like actually in the next week or so, probably, as we record this. But yes, they rank the teams by worst to best. If you won the Super Bowl last year, you got the last pick. If you had the worst record last year, you have the first pick. And there are some variations depending on if teams trade their picks and things like that. So there's that throws some confusion into that. Anyway, in Draft Day, Kevin Costner is the general manager of the Cleveland Browns, and they have, I believe, the 3rd or 4th pick, and they decide to trade up to the 1st pick with a Seattle team so that they can get this awesome quarterback. And they also trade their next 3 years of 1st round picks to get to this guy, which is not completely unheard of, but it's in a massive haul. And so throughout the whole movie, there's this question as to whether they're doing the right thing about giving all these picks away and everything. The biggest sin of this movie, though, is there is a player that they want, and then there's a player that they really want, and they also they're trying to figure out if they can. I can't really get through all that whole thing. I'm just going to tell you that by the end of this movie, they not only get the player they want, they don't get the quarterback that they've been talking about this whole movie. They get some other player. They make him the 1st pick, and they get all their picks back by the end of it because they make the other teams feel bad about where they are and what their trades are and everything. Yeah,
that doesn't feel like that should work.
That's the appropriate look there, Ian. Because the Seattle guy at the beginning basically goads Costner into this trade and saying, you don't have the balls, blah, blah, blah. And you're a dick. And, I fucked your mother last night. That type of thing, that type of thing is going on.
Yeah.
And then by the end, the Seattle guy starts getting heat because the Seattle fans really want this quarterback. And so by the end of it, Kevin Costner gives him that pick back, but then he gets a whole bunch of other picks back, and they get the player they wanted. They get I think they get 2 players they wanted. And they get everything they want because of some absolute nonsense that would never happen in an NFL draft ever. And yes, if you're just saying it's a movie, I guess you'll have a good time because isn't it fun seeing how these wheelings and dealings go? Kevin Costner should, in all honesty, be fired before this even happens, before any of this stuff happens. He makes so many bad moves in this. And there's a weird thing too about the quarterback. This highly rated quarterback, that there's some question about his character that they're never able to confirm. And that quarterback ends up falling in the draft so far down, like nobody has any explanation for it. There's just no explanation for why this guy, there's no story that backs anything up. It's just some I wonder if this may be happened. and there's not any like, it's really strange how this movie goes along. But anyway, that's what I gotta say about Draft Day, I guess.
I would love to watch it just from the point of view of not knowing what
And
any of this is.
there's so many intricacies here. Like, you'd have to really get into the weeds to talk about this movie, about how insane it is that he ends up getting everybody he wants plus all of his picks back and all this, like it's insane. But
Kind of
that's
feels
just
a bit
what I
Ocean's
remember about
11-y. Like the complexity of like an Ocean's 11 plan where you think they're going to lose, but then they end up with everything plus a little bit more, and he sleeps with the casino owner's wife as well at the same time.
Yeah.
Ian,
Yes.
some final conversation and a vote from you, please.
I can't add much because I remember the Lord of the Flame. What's his name from Ice Age? The chipmunk squirrel thing, sloth. What's his name? Lord of the Flame. Your tail's on fire. Him. Help me out.
The
God, I don't
character's
remember.
name? The name of the
sloth's name.
character?
Yeah.
The John Leguizamo, right?
Yeah,
Voices?
him. Anyway, I remember him playing with some baby dinosaurs.
Sid.
Yeah, Sid.
There
Yes.
we go. And I feel exactly the same about the Ice Age movies. There are some fun characters that never really get to be in a fun movie that is cohesive, apart from maybe the film. And Draft Day, how do I the level of complexity of the sins in Draft Day makes me feel like I want to give it to Draft Day just because I never want to talk about Ice Age ever again. So I think Draft Day is more sinful.
All right, Ian votes for Draft Day. I'm going to vote for Ice Age. Just is such a non-movie, the sins in that movie. So, Chris, as it should be, you will make the deciding vote because you've written on both of them.
Yeah, I mean, I think Draft Day's ridiculousness really puts it heavily into the conversation on this. But I think Ice Age, even though I don't remember too much about it, and yes, I do remember Sid having the 3 dinosaur eggs and trying to be the father and all of that. That is something I do remember about this movie. I think Ice Age is the more sinful movie. Draft Day just happens to have the big whopper sins in it.
The big
So
elephant.
like I think Ice Age is more sinful and it should probably move on, but Draft Day like gets very close considering where it goes.
It's a close one.
with it.
Ice Age is the vote. The audience also goes for Ice Age, but it was also close with the audience. 54% to 46% had Ice Age as the winner there. So there you go. Ice Age will be moving on. And we will move on to another one, Punisher Warzone, the 23 seed versus Candyman 2021, which is 106 seed. Candyman 2021 only 89 sins, the second least sin total of the year last year. So that's what makes it the 106 seed. Punisher Warzone 177 sins, I should say. I wrote on Punisher Warzone, and that movie is so sinful that I have completely taken it out of my memory. It is so bad. I just remember feeling like during that movie, like that Ray Stevenson was kind of a good pick for the character, but that the things they had him do were so over the top and ridiculous. And what's strange about this movie, and maybe the biggest sin of this movie, is I don't think it knows which kind of comic book movie it wants to be. Because there are times when like the graphic, gratuitous violence is happening and things are happening in the plot that are dark and dour and just kind of that like gritty comic book kind of feel. And then there will immediately be something where somebody slips on a banana peel or, makes a terrible pun or, there's this moment.
You just got punished.
I highly encourage, if nothing else, the scene to watch from this movie is there's a jumping from one roof to another scene that is one of those, and I won't even attempt to describe it for you here, but it is one of the most ridiculous things I have ever seen in a movie, what it decides to do with that scene and the way it decides to play it. And it is so, the tonality of it is so different than anything else that's happening in the movie. It's just like the movie couldn't figure out what it wanted to be. So yeah, it is. Punisher Warzone is a very sinful movie and well deserving of the 177 sins it gets. Chris, why don't you kick us off with some conversation, since none of us wrote on Candyman? Some of your thoughts on maybe Candyman 2021 and Punisher Warzone, and then go ahead and vote.
Okay. Well, Candyman is a beautiful movie. I think the sinful thing, the most sinful thing about Candyman is sort of its ending. The ending makes no sense to me, really. And it may be just something that I'm going to have to look into someday to see what the director says about it, because I didn't get what happened at the end. There seems to be a lot of like knowledge that people shouldn't have in this. Like, it seems like, so Coleman Domingo's in this. He's really good. And Yahya Abdul-Mateen is also in the plays the eventual Candyman. There's a point where he's going back to his roots, and this movie does tie into the original Candyman. So he's going back to the projects to like sort of like learn about his roots and all that. And then Coleman Domingo shows up and they start having conversations. And by the end of it, Coleman Domingo is trying to turn him into the new Candyman by the end. But then there's like all this weird stuff that happens at the very end that basically sort of destroys the whole thing that they built. I feel like it doesn't really make sense for me, and maybe it does. I just need to read more into it, because it does. Like, for some people, they say Candyman in the mirror and they die immediately. By the end of it, his girlfriend says it, and he knows instinctively to protect her, or what. It's a weird kind of thing, and knows exactly who to kill, and it's I guess it's because of the transformation that's happened at the end of this movie that he now kills this way instead of the way he killed all the way. I don't know. The movie is beautiful. It has a lot to say, about wrongful deaths. One of the stories that he tells about his youth is that he goes down into this bathroom, and there's a guy who's got a hook for a hand who just gives out candy, and he's very scary. But because he screams at first and doesn't know who this character is, some cops who are outside in this Cabrini Green project, they hear the scream and they immediately go down to go find why the kid was screaming. And it ends up in this guy's death, even though he really is a good guy and he was just handing out candy or whatever. So that's like one of the stories that they tell in this, but it's a beautifully told movie. It's like beautiful to look at. I just thought the ending really just sort of kind of broke everything down. And like I said, I could be wrong about that, but anyway, I don't think it is nearly as sinful as what you talked about with Punisher Warzone. I haven't seen the movie or seen the Sins video, so I'm assuming Punisher Warzone is way more sinful than Candyman.
Ian?
Yeah, I echo what Chris said. I was with Candyman all the way through, and the end did lose me. I can't remember exactly why, but I remember getting lost with some of his actions at the end, and kind of some of the what are we trying to say got lost on me, considering the first 2/3 of the movie, 3/4, has a very clear message and lots of different layered messages. And then it kind of, for me, it loses me with what it is trying to say by the end, whether it's an anti-hero thing or it just seemed to revel in, we've got a new Candyman, rather than driving home the big message.
Third act
much
twist,
like Chris,
strikes again.
Gotta have a twist. But much like Chris, I'm sure there's more, like if it's anything like the first Candyman film, the more research you do, the more you get out of that movie and what's trying to be said.
Yeah.
So that's a vote for Punisher Warzone, I'm assuming?
Even though I haven't seen it, yes, you sold me.
You both vote correctly. It is Punisher Warzone. Candyman is, I agree 100% with what both of you guys said. It's so beautiful, so well acted, so interesting. And then in the third act, just kind of falls apart in some big ways. And it just doesn't, for me, stick the landing. Maybe I need to watch it again. Maybe I need to have a conversation with somebody who can help me understand the third act a little better. I don't know. I just know most of its sins were there for me. However, Punisher Warzone is Punisher Warzone. So that is going to win and move on. The audience agrees, but just barely. 52 to 48%.
This feels like
what are you doing?
This feels like a situation where more people have seen Candyman and they
Maybe. That could be possibly. All right, we'll finish it off with a battle between The Wedding Singer and Turning Red. The Wedding Singer and Turning Red. Wedding Singer with 138 sins. Turning Red with 116. Ian, go ahead. Tell us why The Wedding Singer is a sinful movie.
Yeah, it is. It's the most sinful. Sorry.
Of the entire tournament? You already just getting in your final votes?
No, I have an anti-Adam Sandler bias. I'm sorry. And I will watch Happy Madison one day and be happily proved
Happy
wrong,
Madison?
whatever. I'll be a happy Madison. Yeah, The Wedding Singer. I don't know. Why are we rooting for this guy? Why does he win at the end? Sure, the song at the end with the guitar is great, but it shouldn't work. Information I could have used yesterday is hilarious, but I'm sorry that we're not carrying the entire movie. I just really struggle with these Adam Sandler movies and rooting for the main character, and maybe we're not supposed to root for him. Fine, maybe I'm missing the point, but I just spent so much of the movie thinking that they're all terrible. Everyone is terrible. I know you're showing me they're terrible, but they're still terrible, and I don't want to see them be terrible. I don't have a huge amount more that is coherent to say about this movie because I just see red. Whenever I think about it, but I remember just how miserable he is and kind of gives up, but still wins. I'm really struggling to remember what even happens in this movie. I just eject it from my brain, but I'm sure it's more sinful than Turning Red, right? Someone help me out here.
All right, I'll talk a little bit about Turning Red. I wrote on Turning Red. It is not without sin. That is for sure. I do have a tendency when I talk about this movie to talk about how amazing it is, mostly because I feel like it's a fairly underrated Pixar movie. And that is, I think, has a lot to do with just kind of this new era of Pixar, and it's a original story, so it's not a sequel to any other Pixar movie, which I love. It's very specifically tied to Domichi, the director's childhood and growing up as a Canadian, but also, so there's like a lot of Toronto stuff, like very specific Toronto stuff in here, but also a lot of very specific, like what it was to be growing up as an adolescent female during this time. And so it's got these specific things that I think turned some people off, but to me is kind of the magic of it. I love like seeing into somebody else's kind of world and their experiences. But the movie is sinful in the fact that it's just so over the top and unrealistic. There's stuff like, for instance, that the mother character does that she would probably be put in jail for, like the way she's spying on her child's class. There's just other simpler ways for her to accomplish the same thing. Like she's trying to deliver female products to her daughter at school in some sort of, covert way, and she's doing it by hiding behind trees and staring into her classroom. Anyways, it's the silliness of the over the topness that is the sinful, but it's also kind of the point of the movie in many ways too. Like that's the tone that it wants to have, and it's fairly consistent throughout. I also just think it's kind of an audacious movie. Like the idea that they really made a movie about what it means to be an adolescent girl and get your period for the first time, and that they called it Turning Red. Like, I mean, just like kudos, like, to really go there. But yeah, there's still plenty of sins in Turning Red. But Chris, go ahead to have some discussion about these two and then make your vote.
Well, I have not seen Turning Red. I saw Wedding Singer a long time ago. The thing that I remember most about Wedding Singer, other than the famous bits that are in that movie, and this seemed to be, I don't know, this seemed to be a trope in the 90s where the sweetest possible girl is dating the assholiest guy there possibly can be. And yes, I am sure that in real life this happens all the time, but it feels like when you interact with the couple that has the asshole dude, there's something about their partner that seems to be into that and has kind of a, you know, like you can see the attraction that they have with each other. You know, there's got to be a reason why their asshole nature seems to like attract this person. In this movie, Drew Barrymore is gonna marry this guy who's never nice to her the entire movie. The entire movie. And you're just like, yeah, I get it. There are women out there who are just like, I'd like to date a dude who's got money, and I guess that's what this dude has. He's got money, but she doesn't seem to be about money, and she doesn't seem to be about status. And I spent a lot of movies in the 90s going, why did these two people get together? I don't understand what originally got them there. Like, was he sweet at one point and turned into an asshole, or what? So that, I mean, I don't know enough about Turning Red to make an informed decision, but I'm assuming Wedding Singer is more sinful.
That has inspired me more as well. I remember, like, even though she eventually like departs from him and is leaning more towards the Adam Sandler character, he is still terrible to her as well.
Yeah.
And they have some bullshit misunderstanding where his ex turns up and is wearing, and it's just so contrived because
so dumb.
Of course, she turns up, decides to wear his t-shirt, and that's the moment that is it Drew Barrymore?
What?
Yeah. I think it's Drew Barrymore.
The Wedding Singer.
Chooses that moment to turn up, and it's the most incriminating thing possible. But then everything's fine. She doesn't actually get an explanation for why any of that happened, but because he's singing to her on a plane, I love you now. I just
Yeah. And doesn't Billy Idol show up at the end?
Yeah, Billy Idol is in this movie. Yeah,
Billy Idol
comes together with the plan. Yeah,
right.
I'm assuming that's a vote for Wedding Singer, Ian.
Heck yes.
I agree. Wedding Singer is the more sinful movie. I actually haven't watched it in a long time. I may not like it as much today as I did in the past. I do remember thinking it's one of the few Adam Sandler movies that I connected to emotionally. With the song at the end I thought was really sweet, but it's been a long time since I've seen it and I may think about it differently. Audience agrees. 72% say The Wedding Singer is more sinful than Turning Red at 28%.
Heck yes.
So there you go. Those are the battles for today. Moving on to the next round, Top Gun Maverick will move on to the second round. The Black Phone will move on to the second round. The Batman will move on to the second round. Don't Breathe 2, War of the Worlds, Death on the Nile, Dora and the Lost City of Gold, The Bad Guys, Ice Age, The Dawn of Dinosaurs, Punisher Warzone, and The Wedding Singer all moving on to round 2. So
these rounds are going to get really shitty.
That's the point. That is the point.
Listed a ton of movies I don't want to talk about.
There you go. It will all be in the distinctions with an emphasis on the stink. All right, that's going to wrap it up for Behind the Sins this week. Thank you so much for tuning in. Don't forget to make sure you're subscribed and go ahead and leave a comment or rating as well wherever you listen. You can hang out with us on Twitter. The official Twitter for Behind the Sins is at CinemaSinsBTS. So for Ian Whittington, Chris Atkinson, a bad case of backflown, and myself, we will see you next week.
Yes.
Fuck Death on the Nile.
Thanks for listening. Send any feedback to bts@cinemasins.com and be sure to subscribe, rate, and comment. Find more ways to connect by visiting cinemasins.com/BTS.
I may have a puppy barking occasionally on my end. Because Ian, you know this. Chris, you don't know this, but Poppy is the puppy that's hanging out with us right now, and she is all of the demanding
She's needy.
She is a little princess, and the world revolves around her.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something that, in general, I've heard cat people don't have to deal with. In general, cats do their own thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That's correct.
So these are the moments where I'm jealous.
When it came to whether I was going to get a cat or a dog, that was one of the big reasons.
Which one will need me less?
Yep.
Chris, are you a touch typer? Did you have like typing classes in school where you learned like which fingers do which like keys and stuff?
I would say I am self-taught. There was a moment where I took some sort of typing class, but I do type very fast. I don't do the whole fingers on the certain keys type of thing that you learn from Mavis Beacon or whatever. But like,
right.
If that's even still a thing, I'm not even sure if Mavis Beacon's still a thing, but like,
it just sounds like somebody who is in charge of like the communion at church. That's who Mavis Beacon sounds like.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not even a real person. That's what sucks. But anyway, I learned how to type basically because our family had a Commodore 64 during the 80s, and played a couple of text games, including Zork.
Yes.
And other things of that nature. So like, so I learned, and I mean, I don't consciously know what fingers I'm using. It's mostly these two fingers right here, but I'll probably use others here and there, but I type pretty damn fast for somebody who doesn't have like a proper method. Or
You're not classically trained.
Yeah, exactly. So
well, I think that was an attempt to shame me.
No, not at all,
Aaron.
Not at all. No, it was an attempt to give you some like company, because I think most people, especially young, younger than me, most people haven't taken like any kind of like technical type classes or whatever. It's fun watching how quickly you can type with two fingers. Like it's really interesting to me. I don't know that I could do that.
Yeah, Aaron was peeking over my shoulder one day, and I was like, "Sir, are you okay? What's going on?" And he was like, "Are they the only two fingers that you use?" And I'm like, "Yeah, occasionally I'll dabble with the middle finger as well, but it's very much, and I'll get through it really, really quick."
Occasionally I'll dabble with these two fingers.
Right.
Gives me the double birds. Yeah. No, I always have like the keyboards have the little raised thing on the F and the J, so you know that your pointer fingers are in the right place, and then the other three fingers go down, and then it's just every key has a specific finger that's supposed to finger it.
I'm also pretty damn there you go. I'm also pretty damn good.
Yeah.
Horrified my weird thing for my mum to be horrified by, but horrified by the way I type, because my only claim to any kind of sporting link is that she was in her younger days the personal assistant to the manager of Luton Football Club. And he was kind of a big deal because he went on to do some commentating in his later years. David Pleat, for any English soccer fans, David Pleat, I believe, is his name. And she would do like something ridiculous like 7,000 words a minute. And that is not an accurate number.
It's probably I can guarantee you that.
It was like more heartbeats than I have in a minute is how much she can type.
It was 100 words a second. That's how fast.
Go. And yeah, she'd set fire to keyboards. So she's an excellently fast typer.
Commodore 64 was not, I can't remember if it was our first computer, but it was close to it. But one of my uncles go ahead.
Ours was the VIC-20, which was just before the Commodore 64.
I think we had a Texas Instruments.
The VIC-20 had like some very, very like, I mean, we're getting close to Pong level games there. Slightly more advanced, but that was the first one we had. And I think Commodore made the VIC-20, and then Commodore 64 came out after that. I don't know if there was another one before that.
Did your computer, the Commodore 64 didn't have a cartridge slot? It had
no.
Did it have like a big floppy disk slot?
Had a big floppy disk drive.
Yeah,
you'd
have
drive.
Yeah.
Well, I'm trying to think if the VIC-20 may have had a cartridge.
Well,
No,
RTI did. RTI 99, I think, is what it was. I just looked it up. Definitely
the
had a
Commodore
cartridge
64
slot.
may have had a cartridge. Like I remember playing a game called Maze Master that had a cartridge. Did you play that?
Yes, I played all those games. There was one called Parsec that was a cartridge for the TI 99. That was a ton of fun. We used to play that all the time. And then there were the typing games and the math games, all that kind of stuff. So
yeah, I'm looking at one now.
the TI 99.
No, the VIC-20, and it is the most confusing thing I've ever seen. It's a keyboard. So is the whole computer in the keyboard?
Yes.
I don't even remember actually. I didn't log much time on the VIC-20. Commodore 64 was the thing, but
yeah, the whole computer was in the keyboard with a game slot. Was the at least the TI 99 was, but then you had a monitor. You plugged it into a monitor.
Yes.
But
yes. That didn't come with the thing. TI 99. Oh, okay. Now that looks like what Star Trek thought the future was going to look like. How about those Packers?
How about them, Ian? How about the Packers?
Haven't they done a thing?
You're a little out of season, but
right, okay.
But yes, there certainly are Packers things we could talk about. Where do you want to start us off with the Green Bay conversation?
Well, just the decision that ref made in the last game was just ridiculous.
No, like I said, we're off season, so there are no ref decisions right now.
I mean, that signing was
there you go. Now you're getting
signing.
closer. Now you're getting closer.